Hi guys, and welcome to the 2012 anniversary edition of Skyrim Mod Sanctuary. That's right, Skyrim is 1 year old, and in celebration of this birthday, I am going to go back in time, take a quick trip down memory lane, and I'm going to talk about all the mods I've covered in 50 Skyrim Mod Sanctuaries. We're going to see which of them still exist, which of them have changed, which of them we still feel we need. And we're going to look at how the game, how the mods and the modding community itself has evolved over this year and where we see it going in the future. So grab yourself a drink, sit back and let's talk Skyrim. It's the 11th of the 11th of the 11th. Skyrim is released and the modding community is poised, ready to descend on this game and see what it can mod, what needs to be modded, what doesn't need to be modded but's going to get modded anyway. Unfortunately, the creation kit hadn't been released with the game, and this put a bit of a damper on what mods could be created. But did this stop the modding community? No, it did not. There were thousands and thousands of mods coming out even before the creation kit. And before the first week was over, I'd already planned a few of my own mods and had made my first video showing people how to mod the game, trying to help people get started. I really didn't expect much back in those days. I thought it would just be a video that would be seen by a few people. Perhaps I'd link it on my own mods to help people install so I didn't have to troubleshoot as much. And little did I know the response it was going to get. Now, part 1 of Skyrim Mod Sanctuary focused on the Nexus Mod Manager. Now, it was not, and it still is not, the most powerful of the Mod Manager tools, but I figured people who used Bash would probably already be relatively competent at installing mods, and most newcomers would probably, for Skyrim, be using Nexus Mod Manager, at least those that came to the Nexus site. So I decided to cover that in the first video and get people up and running as fast as possible with the ins and outs of installing mods, updating mods, etc. And I have seen this tool grow quite a lot over this year. It's become a lot more stable, although it still has problems, and it is still in beta stage. So it is getting better, and they do believe, they are sort of hinting that it may well be near a final of release version very soon. Now I know there are a few people out there who do dislike it intensely. It has its share of haters, but on the whole, Nexus Mod Manager has made modding very accessible to a large audience. With the built-in integration with Nexus, so you can just click the download with manager button and you can see whether mods have been updated, all these little features. It's definitely helped people who would have been nervous about modding enter into the modding scene. Now, there are still some things missing from it, in my opinion. I would love to see a tool that would allow me to edit the scripted installers for mods or to add them, whereas there is not. So currently what I actually have to do is edit it in Notepad++ and rebuild the archive each time. It's a little annoying, and other mod makers probably know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who are mod users, you probably have no idea and don't care. Don't worry about it. It's just a minor gripe for me. So whether you love it or you hate it, Nexus Mod Manager is definitely here to stay. It has opened modding up to a lot larger audience and probably made some people who were uncomfortable with the concept of modding try it out. And the other mods covered in that video were the Enhanced Blood Textures and the KenMod Lockpick Pro cheat. Now, I chose those for basically the Enhanced Blood Textures I chose because you could install it with Nexus Mod Manager without doing anything other than click the button, but I never tried it myself, so I couldn't really tell you whether it's still worth using or not. I know a lot of people love it, and it's up to you. The KenMod Lockpick Pro is a cheat program. It basically allows you to cheat through the lockpicks. And I used this because at the time it had not been packaged in a way that you could install it using Downloaded Manager. And I didn't mean that as an insult. It's just very few modders knew how to do it, and I was just using it as an example of how you might find mods that you couldn't use Downloaded Manager with. And a day or so later, the mod author had seen my video and changed it to be compatible, which is great. I hope he wasn't insulted by that. It was not meant as an insult. Now, in part 2, I covered 3 mods. The first one was a mod that changed Skyrim so that it could use more than 2 gigabytes of RAM. Yeah, believe it or not, when Skyrim first shipped, it would not use more than 2 gigabytes, which obviously really did hurt its performance, especially if you loaded the game up with a lot of mods. And even at this stage, there were quite a lot of mods that would use memory, texture mods, etc. So it was a bit disappointing that Skyrim was still suffering from a problem that Bethesda had been plagued with for a long time, which was, games that do not use very much memory. Unfortunately, not long after this mod came out, Bethesda encrypted their executable and the mod no longer worked, which was pretty unfortunate. The second mod I covered was the interface hard-coded key mod. Now, this was a mod that fixed an issue for PC users who changed the key mappings, but they didn't behave as expected in-game. Again, Bethesda sort of got wind of this and actually updated the game and fixed a lot of the problems, but apparently this mod is still going, and there are still some features that give you slightly more control over, key presses, etc. So this might be a mod I'm going to check out again, and perhaps cover in a future video. The third mod was the Skyrim Sun Glare mod, and this was a mod that added a very cinematic sun glare to Skyrim, and I'm a big fan of that sort of thing. I like things that make videos look good. I like things that make the game more immersive visually, because obviously I like to take screenshots and I like to take videos. Now for part 3, I covered 2 mods that would enhance performance. The first one was actually the 4GB enabler, which was another mod that allowed Skyrim to use more than 2 gigabytes, but this one actually worked with the encrypted file. So that was a godsend for a lot of us. A lot of us found this helped with performance a lot, stability, and so on. Eventually, Bethesda did make Skyrim use more than 2 gigabytes by default, and this mod obviously then was no longer needed and has since disappeared from Nexus. But again, big thanks to that particular mod maker for doing that. The other mod that I covered was the Simple Borderless window. Now, this is a small program that allows you to run Skyrim in windowed mode, but then it hides the window so it looks like it is full screen. And a lot of people were very confused when they hear this sort of thing, because they want to know why. Well, the game often performs better for people who play like that. It often is a lot more stable as well, so you'll have less crashes. And this is something that has not changed for me. My game is still a lot more stable and a lot smoother when I run it in windowed mode. I get micro stutters if I run the game normally. This is a slight jerkiness to movement, so I still use this mod, and if you have not tried it, you might want to give it a try. I mean, that was part 3, but it's still a mod I use today. Now for part 4, I covered visual enhancement mods. The first mod was the Skyrim Enhanced Shaders mod, which I believe was the first ENB mod for Skyrim on Nexus. Now, it is probably one of the less stylized of the ENB settings, and for me it's a great one to use if you want to just enhance the overall graphics but not change the way the game feels too much. I really did like this mod and still do. I used the same mod in Fallout New Vegas as well, so I'm a bit of a fan of this guy's work. The second mod was the FXAA post-process injector, which was a lot more lightweight than the ENB mods and did make the game look quite a bit nicer. Now, this was a hugely popular mod when it first came out because it really did make a difference to how the game looked and gave minimal FPS drop. But since the advent of some of the more popular ENB mods, I think this is one of the mods that's become less and less popular. It's probably a shame. It might well be worth checking this out. If you want to enhance your graphics, but you're a little worried about performance, you may want to try this mod actually. It could be the one that just gives you that little bit of extra realism or a little better lighting and not hurt your performance. Part 5 sort of introduced mods that added things to the game rather than just change the way the game looked or change the stability, performance. These were mods that actually added things into the game, content. The first one was the Dragonbone Weapons mod, and obviously it just added Dragonbone weapons. This was kind of a nice idea because at the time you just didn't get that. You had Daedric weapons, Orcish weapons, but no Dragonbone weapons. The models, I believe, were Orcish, if my memory serves me right, but at the time of the video I made the mistake of saying they were Daedric and got corrected several times on that one, but they used Dragonbone textures. Very nice mod actually. The second mod was the More Craftables mod. And this was a mod that basically did exactly what it said. It gave you far more weapons, armor, etc. to craft. So if you were heavily into smithing, you got a lot more options. You could make things that you could not make in the vanilla game. And I'm not talking about items that were not in existence. I'm talking about things like blade armor, the forsworn weapons, those type of things that at the time you could not make. And so this mod allowed you to do that, which was a really great idea. Now in part 6, I covered quite a lot of mods, but the first 3 were focusing on faces. The first one was the No More Blocky Faces mod, and this was almost an essential mod for me because when the game first came out, it had this horrible problem that if you went up to people very close and looked at their face, they seemed to be made up of small computerized blocks. It was really horrible, and it did break immersion. And this mod fixed that and made their faces a lot more realistic. Now this mod is probably no longer needed because the Bethesda did release a later patch. Actually, I believe it was a DLC type of a sort of free DLC, which was a high quality texture pack. And when I started using that, the blocky face problem disappeared. But if you are having this problem still, and perhaps you are not using the high quality textures from Bethesda, and maybe the low quality ones still have this problem, check this mod out. It might well help. Now I also covered the high quality eyes and the XCE, which was Xenius Character Enhancement, and these were 2 mods that basically made people's faces look a little nicer. It made the eyes higher quality and a little bit more interesting. This is not a mod I use anymore. I'm not that bothered about characters' faces. I don't really spend a lot of time looking at the NPCs' faces, so it doesn't bother me as much. But if you're someone who spends a lot of time up close and personal, again, these mods were great. Now, the last 2 mods I covered in that video were Val's Crafting Meltdown, which was a mod that allowed you to melt down items. So, for example, if you had ebony armor, you could melt it down into its raw materials, which gave you a way of using things you found for metal. It was fairly balanced in that if you made an item out of ebony that took 4 bars of ebony, 4 ingots, when you broke it down you only got 2 back. So you couldn't keep crafting forever until you got 100 smithing. You would use the materials, but you didn't use them as much as if you just, basically had to throw away everything you'd made. So you did get some element of recycling, and that was a really nice idea. And the last mod was the Weaponry Texture Project, which was sort of a very, very simple mod that gave higher quality textures for some of the basic weapons like the steel dagger, the steel warhammer, etc. Now, part 7 was about Sky UI. Now, I knew about this in advance and had in fact been testing the mod. I work with these guys on a few other projects. They've helped me out a lot on Immersive HUD. And some of the guys there are guys from the SKSE team and even some people from the Project Nevada team and the FWE team. So there's a lot of modders involved that come in and out of Sky UI. So I'd been aware of this one for some time, and a few people had seen it on a couple of my videos and asked what this mod was, because obviously the user interface for Skyrim, the default one, for PC users is not brilliant. I know some people like it, especially people who use controllers, and that's fine. But the rest of us, we hated it. And Sky UI is probably one of the most essential mods for most PC users out there. I've seen very few people who mod their game a lot who don't use Sky UI. It is currently the most endorsed mod on Nexus ever. That includes all games. Now, this mod is still being developed, and I can tell you these guys work ridiculously hard. The Sky UI team and the SKSE team, they pretty much work hand in hand at the moment. It's very hard to distinguish them, and they're probably some of the hardest working programmers I've ever seen. And I mean, I work in this business. So I don't mean the modding business, I mean the programming business. These guys really take it seriously. The number of hours that have gone into Sky UI, well, it's incredible. I mean, it's insane. It's several thousand. And there is more coming. Most of you probably by now already have seen the MCM menu system, and you may have heard some hints of new things coming. And all I can tell you, or all I'm going to tell you, is there are a lot of new features that are really going to help not just Sky UI users, but other mod makers be able to make mods they would not otherwise be able to make. And I'm not going to tell you anything else, but you should definitely keep checking this space out. There will be more details. Now, part 8 was a quick video I released just before Christmas, so it gives you an idea of the timeline here. And it had 2 mods. The first mod was a mod that retextured the Nightingale armor, but that mod has since disappeared. So you can't get it anymore, I'm afraid. I, luckily, still have a copy of it on my system, so I can use it if I want, but no, I cannot post it. That is not allowed. I'm sorry. And no, I will not post it anywhere hidden. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm afraid if you didn't get a copy of that when it was released, you're probably in trouble, or you're missing out. The other mod that I covered was the Night Eye illusion spell, because at the time there wasn't one, which was very annoying indeed. Although, to be honest, I am not a big fan of the Night Eye spell in Skyrim. I found it almost useless. I much preferred the torchlight. However, still a great mod at the time. Gave you an option to have Night Eye. I can't believe that Bethesda took Night Eye out of the game. It's been in there for, I know it was in Morrowind and Oblivion. For some reason it wasn't in Skyrim. But anyway, that's what the modding community's for, isn't it? Now, part 9. Part 9 was the acceleration layer video. And this was a mod. The acceleration layer was a mod for SKSE. And it gave a massive boost to performance. In certain places, maybe 30% better frame rate. And this was especially in places that were massive frame rate problem areas, such as Whiterun on the steppes. Anywhere where it was CPU bottlenecked, this mod gave a great boost. It's no longer needed because the things it did are now done automatically by the game. Bethesda updated the game so that it did perform better. But at the time, this was one of those mods that was an absolute godsend for a lot of us. Now, part 10 had quite a lot of mods, but it started by focusing on 2 mods made by the same mod author. And these mods were the Script Dragon and Skyboost. Now I'll cover Skyboost first. Skyboost was an alternative to the acceleration layer in that it gave a boost to performance. A lot of people found it actually gave a bigger boost to performance than the acceleration layer, so this was a very, very popular mod. And even after Skyrim incorporated the changes from the acceleration layer, people continued to use Skyboost because it still gave a performance boost, so why not? However, Skyboost has not been updated for quite some time, and so you can't really use it anymore. Now, Script Dragon is a sort of alternative to SKSE. You can actually use SKSE and Script Dragon at the same time, and they both do something similar in that they extend what a mod maker can do with the Skyrim engine. They do it in different ways. I'm not going to cover that in this video, but they do it in slightly different ways. Script Dragon is still updated and can still be used, although I haven't used it in quite some time. I do remember that Script Dragon would get updated several days after a new patch, whereas SKSE tends to get updated more or less instantly. And one of the other mods I covered in that video was the extra hotkeys mod, which gives you extra hotkeys, big surprise, and used Script Dragon. Now, of course, there is an alternative to that mod that uses SKSE, and I have covered that in a previous video. One of the other mods in that video was the categorized favorite menu, and this is still a very, very popular mod. For those of you who've not used it, it takes the horribly small and fairly useless favorite menu of Skyrim and makes it a very large and very useful menu, especially if you're a spellcaster with hundreds of spells. It really is one of those essential mods for PC users if you have lots of potions, lots of spells, lots of different weapons. If you're the sort of person who's only got 10 things on your favorite list, you possibly don't need it. If you're someone like me who has 100 things on your favorite list, you need this. It's nice to not have to open up your spell menu, your inventory menu, and go through page after page to find the spell you need. You just press one button, all of them come up, you can change your weapon, your spells, and your shout all in one go and quickly get back in the fight. This is still an utterly essential mod for me. This one is one I cannot live without. In fact, the later versions could be customized quite a lot. You could change the layout, change the settings, even change the colors, and you can even download pre-made settings from other mod authors. I actually use one, and I will link to that in another video. And lastly, in part 10, the quality world map with roads. Now, this is one of the most endorsed mods on Nexus, and it's brilliant. Basically, it does exactly what it says on the in the title. It gives a very high quality world map, and it adds roads to it. For me, this is one of the things that Skyrim was missing when it gave you this world map that looked like the world. In fact, was basically a miniature version of the world. Not having roads show up was a major weakness, because any map I have ever used has had roads on it so that you can plan your journey. But in Skyrim, no. And that's completely unreasonable, because it's not as if the Skyrim society's in the Stone Age. They're going to have maps. They're going to have major roads on those maps so you can plan your journey. So this mod, again, for me, still one of my essential mods. Now, one of the amazing things to remember here is at this point in Skyrim's history, the creation kit had still not been released. You probably have noticed in this video I've covered quite a lot of mods that don't really add that much content. Maybe they add better visuals, maybe they change some textures, maybe they give better performance. But there are no quest mods. There are very few mods that add items. And that's because there was no creation kit at this point. At this point, we're just past the new year, and still, months later, no creation kit, and yet the modding community had still managed to produce some utterly great mods. But of course, with the creation kit coming out soon, we were just getting warmed up.